Hi, everybody. Welcome to podcast number 2. We're making some progress here. This time I'm going to do a little introduction on my work with people with gender dysphoria. I think it's a population within the mental health field that I think is kind of on the new frontiers as far as not having a lot of good clinical information available for clinicians like me to just kind of look up and see, how do I help this person with this issue? I feel kind of like I'm on the cutting edge, and I've learned so much from each of my clients, and it's for that reason that I want to share with everybody the kinds of things I'm learning so that other clinicians and people experiencing gender dysphoria and their loved ones can benefit from all the lessons that I've learned. Because it's not always common sense, and it's sometimes there are more similarities among all of us, and sometimes there's some extreme differences, but more often than not, I'm amazed at how similar the experiences are growing up and figuring out who we are just as a human being. So just to kind of recap who I am, if you didn't see podcast number 1, shame on you. But anyway, I'm a licensed clinician in California and Oregon. I live on the border. So I've got an office in Mount Shasta, California, and in Ashland, Oregon. I've taught some upper division micro skills of counseling courses at Southern Oregon University. And I work with people with gender dysphoria, veterans, and I'm also a certified first responder counselor and peer support team leader and trainer. So those are my 3 focuses of my practice. And I know what you're thinking. You can see a connection maybe between a veteran population and the first responders, but where did the gender dysphoria come from? So in a nutshell, we live in a rural community, and it seems like I'm filling voids for people with serious emotional pain that no one else will treat. And I'll get into it a little bit, how I fell into it and how that's going. So I graduated from school, and I got a 6-month free profile with the Psychology Today website. And at first I thought, that's just a scam. I didn't want to do it. But one of my classmates said, hey, I just got an email from a family in Japan, and they found me on Psychology Today. They said they have a daughter that's coming to school here next year, and they wanted to have a counselor ready for her. So you should really do it. So I thought, okay, great. Maybe I should do it. So went online, filled out my information. And because I needed hours for licensing, to be honest, I just kind of checked all the boxes as far as who do I want to treat? What kind of symptoms or disorders do I want to treat? And so, for example, ADHD, anxiety, depression, PTSD, check down the row. And I figured, if somebody comes to me who has a situation I can't handle, I'll just refer them out to somebody else. But at least I check all these boxes, and then I get people to come see me, and I maybe can get a sense of what is the kind of client I'm going to really click with, and then, take it from there and make that my focus. So it just turned out, after I filled out my profile information, I started getting calls and emails from people in our area who were experiencing gender dysphoria. And I was kind of surprised by that. I'm thinking, why are they contacting me? I'm just an intern. These are serious complaints. I asked them, why did you contact me? I'm not licensed yet. And they said, well, for the most part, you're the only one between Portland and San Francisco who checked those boxes for gender dysphoria. And I thought, oh, wow. And I just explained to them, well, I'm just out of grad school, so if you're willing to give it a shot, I'm willing to give it a shot. And they're like, yeah, they didn't have much choice. So I started seeing people with gender dysphoria. But then that got me thinking, like, no, wait a minute, how can I be the only one who checked those boxes? Because I knew that some of my professors at the university had private practices, and they didn't seem like the type to discriminate. So I went to them and I was like, why didn't you check those boxes? These people are already marginalized. How do you think it makes them feel that they look at your profile online and you see everybody but them? And they explained to me the reason they didn't check those boxes was because they were not professionally competent to see this group. So they said, well, you have to know about endocrinology, you need to know about surgeries, you have to know about all the theoretical models, the evidence-based care, the standards of care for gender identity development and transitioning. And that's a lot to do. And because they didn't do it, they didn't feel competent to work with that group. So I kind of made the decision at that point, well, okay, I'm going to go and get competent, right? I'm going to go and attend conferences and get certified and read articles and books and watch videos and do what I need to do to help these poor people. Little did I realize we live in a rural community, and I would think there wouldn't be enough people with gender dysphoria to keep a practice full. But that wasn't the case, because as soon as word got out that I was working on making that the focus of my practice, I started getting calls from hundreds of miles away. People were willing to do telehealth sessions via Zoom, whatever they could to get help. So it wasn't long before I filled up my practice on just gender dysphoria alone. So in the beginning, going in, I thought, oh, this can't be that hard. I'll just learn about hormones and surgeries, and I get along with everybody, and it should be common sense, how to help these people. But I learned the hard way for a few things, that what you would think would be the right thing to say is not the right thing to say. So I'm going to share with you some of those things that I learned, so that hopefully it will enlighten you, not to say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing, but also just to kind of help you see it from a deeper perspective, of what these people are living through every day. So I guess maybe I should define gender dysphoria for everyone who's not really sure what that is. Dysphoria is the opposite of euphoria. So if you feel euphoric, you're really excited, you feel good, you're happy. Dysphoria means the opposite. So you're sad, you're in despair, you feel terrible. And people can feel gender dysphoric about different parts of themselves. They can have gender dysphoria about maybe their body shape, maybe the shape of their jawbone or their brow bone or the shape of their nose, or facial hair or body hair. Maybe they want big boobs. Maybe they want a vaginal canal and a vulva. And by the way, this talk is going to get a little sexual, so just heads up. But welcome to a day in my life. So you were warned. Just another day at the office. So people can feel dysphoric about different things. Also, let me explain my understanding of where gender dysphoria comes from. I am definitely not a big supporter of the liberal LGB groups. I, as a clinician, actually, and I'm sure I'll get more into this as I go along, have found that identity of being an LGB person, a transgender person, to actually impede the process of integrating the identity. So in my opinion, it's actually hurts my clients in the long run. And I'll get into that a little later on about how I help them to just feel like a normal person. That's all they want, is to fit in and be a normal person. But so I explain gender dysphoria from the medical model, not the political nonprofit org model, gay pride parade model. I look at it from a medical perspective. So from what I understand, all the babies in the womb, once they're conceived, start out as a female. And then things happen, genes are activated to cause the ovaries to drop down to become testes, and the body develops as a male. If there are testes, obviously it's going to produce testosterone and the body's going to develop male sex traits. But the brain is also developing during the fetal development, and we have the body and brain kind of developing the whole time. But it's possible that the brain is wiring female and something happens during the fetal development to trigger those ovaries to drop. So maybe, there are theories, but maybe the adrenals made too much DHEA, which is an androgen. Maybe that could cause the ovaries to drop. Maybe something happened in the mother's endocrine system to cause the baby to drop those ovaries. But the problem is, if the brain is wiring as a female and the body starts taking a male track, now we have an incongruence, so that the sex between the ears doesn't match the sex between the legs. And if we look at history, when babies are born, the parents, the easiest thing to do when the baby comes out is look between its legs, right? Oh, I have a boy or I have a girl. And then they raise it accordingly. We don't have like scanners to scan the brain when the baby comes out to say, well, how did the brain wire? Is this a female brain or a male brain? So, and we know that male brains and female brains are different because we have technology to look at them now, and we know that different nerve bundles develop different thicknesses and efficiencies. The corpus callosum, those kind of things are very obviously different between male and female. So the clients that I work with, and I kind of specialize in feminization because I love to talk about, well, first of all, I'm a female, right? So I can be a life coach. I can teach them how to be feminine. I can talk about wearing makeup. I can talk about shaving your legs. I can talk about going shopping, buying clothes, and doing your hair, and talking like a female. So those are things I can really naturally, easily coach to my clients and model for my clients. So to be honest, I have seen some clients going the other direction from female to male, only because there's no one else in the area to help them. But to be honest, if I can, I will refer them out to a male therapist, because I just can't coach them to masculinize. I feel like I can only give them like 20% of what they really need. Whereas my feminizing clients, we're just flying like 200%, full blast into feminizing territory. So to me, that's a natural fit. It's effortless. So I work with the feminizing clients. The clients typically come to me, actually they come to me at all ages, to be honest. I was just going to say, they usually come to me like in their early 20s, but that's not true, because I've had clients as young as 4. I've had clients as old as 81. An interesting thing too, shortly after graduating, I started getting referrals from the VA. And although they weren't gender dysphoric, I thought, well, I should accept these clients through the choice program, because we live in a rural community. There aren't a lot of therapists around, and I really want to show my appreciation for their service. So I'm going to kind of pay it forward and see them, help them with their PTSD and relationships, or TBI, or whatever is their issue that they need help with. Little did I know I was going to start getting veterans experiencing gender dysphoria. And it turns out that people experiencing gender dysphoria go into the military as a way of suppressing their urge to feminize. So especially, the baby boomer generation, and maybe a little later, where they didn't even really know what gender dysphoria was. So they did their best to, if you were a male between the legs, you tried to live as a male the best you could and just assume like, oh, there just must be something wrong with me mentally. But I'll try to hide that to be the best son and husband and father that I can. And one of the ways that they do that is to join the military, because that way it sort of removes the temptation of cross-dressing and, experimenting with like makeup and hair and that kind of thing. So they're going to be the soldier that everyone wants them to be, the male soldier that the church and family and everyone wants them to be. But what happens when they get out of the military? That gender dysphoria doesn't go away. In fact, sadly, one of my veterans went into the military, exactly what I was just saying, for that reason, and killed people in Vietnam, and then came back feeling suicidal and guilty because she said people died because I had to prove I was a man. So that was really hard. So obviously, it helps them cope, but it's not a solution, right? So that was an interesting kind of eye-opening experience to be getting these veterans who are experiencing gender dysphoria. Now, another veteran that came to me was 81 years old and suddenly started cross-dressing and wasn't sure why. So most of my clients have a very long history going back to childhood, or at least by puberty, of realizing, hey, my body and society's expectations of me are not matching what I'm thinking and what I want to do up here. But anyway, so this client was 81 years old, said, all of a sudden I want to wear women's clothing and I don't know why. So we started unpacking it, and turns out his wife had died recently. And I asked him, so how do you feel when you're wearing those clothes? And he said, the feeling of the fabric, the silkiness, the laciness, just the scent of the perfume reminds me of my mother. And I feel safe, and because I'm thinking of my mom. So I thought, wow, like this is like a security blanket for this guy. This is what this guy's using to get through the grief of the loss of his wife. So fortunately, he had a great ego strength. He didn't feel an urge to, have an answer like, how long am I going to want to dress like this? Where does it come from? What are we going to do? He was just like, well, I'm just going to enjoy it while it's here. And if the feeling goes away, he was fine with that too. He just needed some answers, and he needed to, at least have somebody like me that can help him sort that out. And so he just went on his merry way. And that, just so you know, just because someone has gender dysphoria doesn't mean they need to transition into the other gender or the other sex. I don't believe that. And I just did it, but I switched the word gender and sex. And so let me just touch on that a little bit, because that's an issue that comes up. So we know sex as the physical trait, right, of male or female. You're a female physically, or you're a male physically. Gender is the role you play socially. In fact, I fully believe that gender is a social construct, even though half of the people are going to argue with me and hate me for it. But I really believe that, because I think of in the past when men wore skirts and men wore high heels to keep their feet from sliding through the stirrups of their saddles. I feel that the way we look and act as our gender is a social role, and we act according to the norms of the group that we are living in. So because those change from time to time and group to group and geographic location to geographic location, I fully believe that gender is a social construct. And then the third thing we have is sexual orientation, which basically means who are you attracted to. I've come to realize there are several types of attraction. There's a romantic attraction, there's a physical sexual attraction. Some people might be romantically attracted to a certain kind of person. Maybe they're not sexually attracted to anybody, or maybe they're not romantically attracted to anybody, but maybe they're sexually attracted to everybody, or maybe they're romantically attracted to effeminate men, but they're sexually attracted to masculine men. So there are a lot of layers to attraction, but just to put it in sort of a package, you have basically your sex, physical sex, you have your social gender, and then you have your sexual orientation, who you're attracted to. Interesting thing in terms of the people experiencing gender dysphoria who really are wired as a female between the ears. I've seen this really interesting pattern of their sexual orientation as their identity integrates. So I'll walk you through a typical example. So people who have gender dysphoria, incongruent physical and mental sex, typically, depending on what their childhood is like, they grow up in a household. Hopefully the parents just let him play with whatever toys he wants. And before the 50s, boys and girls' toys weren't that different. Now everything's pink or blue, just so they can make parents buy a different set for each sex of their kids. But that's a marketing thing more than anything. But for the most part, depending on the household where the kids grow up, if you have very feminine girl type toys and boy type toys, you might see, if your kid has gender dysphoria or, an incongruent sex, you might see that, my kid has a penis, but he's gravitating toward the Barbies. Like, what's going on there? But if you grew up on the farm where you didn't have kind of stereotypical male or female toys for your kids, like let's say they're just outside playing with the dog or, playing in the dirt or with a wagon or whatever, the kid might not demonstrate a sex type behavior or play, like as a boy or as a girl. They just play as a unisex kid. So if you don't have the Barbies and all that, where you're like, my son is playing with Barbies and he's into makeup and that kind of thing. If the kid just has a sexually neutral environment growing up, you may not notice anything going on until puberty, because that's when the dysphoria is going to hit normally, because that's when our brains start wiring for reproduction. And that's when also socially, like at school, that's when the boys are going one way, the girls are going the other way. And who do I want to just hang out with? Do I want to go and chat with the girls, hang out with the girls, or do I want to rough and tumble play with the boys? So some, like my clients, a classic client that I would see, because they would have a female brain, would be entering into puberty saying, I want to go hang out with the girls. I want to go shopping with the girls. I want to talk about makeup with the girls. I want to, giggle and draw pictures and write notes and all the stuff girls do. I don't want to go play football and wrestle with the boys and tell stupid jokes and watch sports or whatever. I'm not into that. But because they have to fit in, they tend to, they either try really hard to fit in and maybe even overcompensate to be like super masculine to hide any sign of any feminine traits, or they isolate and they just pull out and they will be an isolated sort of outcast kid. And another reason they'll isolate is because it's just too much cognitive drain to have to self-censor everything they say and do, or every facial expression and body language, because they're trying to play the role of, if you have a female brain but a male body, society expects you to act like your body. So you have to censor everything you say to sound like a boy. And that's when, that's why at puberty, these poor kids get really dysphoric, they get really depressed, they get suicidal. It's such a drain for them. They almost don't have an identity because they can't form relationships with people because they're not who they are. They're playing a role like a character out of a movie, but there's no script. So they're constantly thinking, well, if I want to fit in as a boy, what would a boy be thinking right now? Or how would a boy be laughing at this joke? Or how should I be sitting? Or it's just too much work. So they just don't connect with people at all. They become like a shell of a person, and their real identity is hidden down. It's really sad. So they do have these traits, so they have these thoughts, right? So going back to the sexual orientation, the evolution of it, they know something's not right with them. And that's another thing that bothers me about the LGBT movement is they push onto everybody like, this is normal, normalize it. Gay pride. It's like, why would you be proud that something's not right with you? Like, I wouldn't be proud I had cancer. I wouldn't be proud, I have a disease of some sort. I mean, obviously, my clients are not coming through the door saying I'm normal. They're saying something is wrong with me, and if we can't figure it out, I'm going to kill myself. So they're not saying it's normal. And so that's another thing that kind of gets me about the LGBT movement. But so my clients are having all these female thoughts, but they're stuck in this very confining, restrictive, like societal expectation that they need to be male. So they wonder, well, I wonder if I'm just gay. Like maybe I should be an effeminate boy. Maybe I'm a boy, but I'm just effeminate. That's it. I'm just maybe gay. So some of them might, if they courageous enough, they might experiment with some same-sex. They might get together with another male and experiment sexually to see if that's going to do it for them. Unfortunately, it doesn't. The reason is because they're with a dude as a dude, and they need to be with a dude as a female. So, and there's a difference, right? Because dudes doing dudes is not the same as a dude with a female. But they don't know that. Especially a couple generations back, they didn't even know what gender dysphoria was, or that there was a possibility of transitioning. If anything, they thought it was maybe a fetish, and they have a whole bunch of shame and guilt around that. Which brings me to another point. I'll interject it here before I go on so I don't forget. And that has to do with one of the things I thought was going to be common sense going into working with this population was that, I'll just decide. I mean, I use obviously the criteria in the DSM, but I thought, if someone comes through my door and they're cross-dressing, one of the obviously first decisions I'm going to have to make is this a fetish or is this gender dysphoria? So, and the way I thought it'd be easy. I'll just ask them, is there any arousal factor involved? So are you dressing up as a girl and masturbating and you're getting off on that? And if so, then it must be a fetish, right? It must be really simple, but it's not. Because if you think about at puberty, you have someone who's a female in the brain and they're living a role as a male, during the day in their relationships. Kids are developing sexually, so they're going to experiment with that. They're going to be masturbating. Wouldn't it make sense that while you're masturbating, when it's your time, your private time with yourself, to be your true self, wouldn't it make sense if you had a female brain that while you're in your most primal, hardwired act of sexual arousal, wouldn't you want to be your true self? And wouldn't you want to celebrate that? Like, wouldn't you want to be dressed as a female and fantasizing yourself being made love to as a female? And so what? You masturbate, you have an orgasm, right? So the question is that I've come to discover, when you're done with your orgasm, who are you? So if it's a fetish, you're going to dress up like a female, you're going to get off, and then you're going to be done. You're going to take off the female clothes and go back to being a dude. But if you are truly a female, if your brain is wired to be female, you are going to dress up as a female, you're going to get off, and you're going to still be a female when you're done. That is the difference. So you can't say if there's an arousal factor, it has to be a fetish. You can't say that. Also, giving a little credit to my licensing supervisor and my dear graduate professor, Paul Murray, who was a Freudian analyst, ironically hired at the university as a diversity hire, not because he's an outed gay male, but because he was a Freudian analyst, which I thought was pretty funny. But when he first introduced Freud to me, in fact, it was just before summer break, and he's like, "Here, you want to read this book over summer break?" And it was about Freud's work. And I said, "No, I don't have penis envy. I don't like this guy's work." And I gave the book back to him, but I didn't realize that was his thing. I didn't realize he had all his roots sunk real deep into Freud's work. So the last several years, I think Freud's full of shit, But now I'm coming full circle, and because Freud, turns out, was really into BDSM research, and so am I. And the reason is I have discovered to really find out who someone is and where they're at with their identity development, all I have to know is what is your sexual fantasy, because that is your most primal identity. That is your truest self. That's below the inner critic. That's below society's expectations. That's when you are almost in a hypnotic state. That is when you are in your body. That's who you are. And Freud believed that. And so I've kind of come full circle. Thanks, Paul, for that. So yeah, I'm a kink-aware therapist. I think all therapists should be, because I don't think there should be anything that a client can't bring up in a session that they need to talk about. So if the therapist is afraid to go there, they're going to collude with the client and be afraid to go there. So I think it's really important for all therapists to be kink aware and be just comfortable talking about this kind of stuff. So sexual fantasy is critical. Oh, so going back to the sexual orientation. All right. So we've got a kid, female brain, playing the role of a male from birth, at school and at home with family, whatever, friends, and thinks, oh, well, okay, so maybe I'm gay. Go and try some things with another dude. Didn't feel right. So that's not it. So what's wrong with me? Again, they isolate because they can't figure it out. And an interesting thing, too, I've discovered is they'll tell me, I was madly in love with a lot of girls in school, but we never really connected. Either, I'd ask them out, they wouldn't go out with me, or they would be interested in me and I would shy away from them. I think the reason is they weren't available, and because they weren't who they were. If they had connected with a girl, she would have expected them to play the role of the male. She would have wanted them to kiss her and make love to her as a male. And if you're a female, mentally, hardwired in the brain as a female, you don't want to play the role of a male. So I think those relationships don't work. You're not available because you can't connect with that other person in that role. So, and I think sometimes people send off these subconscious signals, I'm not available, and then people don't even approach them. So, but what's really interesting about their attraction toward the female is I discovered they're in love with the girls not because they're attracted to them sexually, but because they want to become them. They love femininity. They're craving femininity. They want to live through the women. Sadly, I have some clients who developed friendships with females. In their mind, they're like, we're going to go shopping and do things like girlfriends do. In her mind, I got a boyfriend. And if, he's not going to kiss me and marry me and make love to me and make a baby, I'm out of here. So they end up being intimate. They end up having a baby. Before you know it, they're locked in the role as husband and father and grandfather and veteran, or, it's that, and that's sad because now they're trapped. And if they do ever come out, now you have a family that's going to say, what the heck, we didn't sign up for this. That's a big lie. Like, who are you? So I'm always, happy when people can come out or, integrate their identity before they get into serious relationships. Because if you don't know who you are, how can you really be with another person anyway? So they want to be a woman more than they're in love with the women. And they realize, because a lot of people will say, okay, I'm gay. Nope, that didn't work out. Maybe I am heterosexual because I love women. No, that didn't work out either. What's wrong with me? Some of my clients say, I just don't know what's wrong with me, until finally they come and see someone like me, and we start unpacking it and realize, well, maybe, or maybe they just didn't know. Maybe they didn't know what gender dysphoria was. They didn't know, anything about transitioning. They just didn't know what the possibilities were, so they felt trapped. Or another interesting thing about coming out, I had a couple revelations this year. One was a couple of my clients had the most sweetest parents ever, yet they waited till their mid-20s to come out to them, or to come out to anybody really, but especially to them. And that was baffling to me, because I thought, these people have like the nicest, sweetest, most open-minded parents in the world. Why are they not coming out to them? Because I know their parents would support them. And the answer I got from both of them, different clients, different sessions, so it's got to be true, because they didn't know what the other one was saying, but they both had the same answer, which was, if my parents were bad parents, it would have been easier to come out, because I wouldn't have cared if I disrupted their lives. But because my parents are so nice and caring, I didn't want to burden them with this. So I kept it in. And I thought, wow, that is pretty deep, So that's not common sense that would be that way. So as we start teasing out what are society's expectations of my clients, and just finally purging everything out, and then we see what's left, that's who they are. And it's just kind of a matter of trial and error, and we start to see patterns of, well, when I do this, I'm happy, but when I do that, I'm not happy. And so then you start seeing a pattern of, well, all the things that are making you happy are feminine type things. Going shopping, looking at colorful things, wearing makeup, hairstyles, cooking, chit-chatting, socializing, just classic female stuff. So then it's a matter of, okay, now we know who you are, or at least we think we know. We're getting an idea who you are. Let's start trying some stuff out to see how can we build a life for you that's going to support who you are, and let who you are determine that life. In other words, we don't contrive, fabricate a life and stick it in and see if it works. We're going literally day by day, getting up in the morning. Do you want to, exfoliate and moisturize? Do you want to, take care of yourself? Do you look forward to that? You want to do your nails? Those kind of things. And for the most part, my clients love that stuff, and they're craving it because they didn't get it like the rest of us girls in junior high and senior high with our girlfriends. And that's so sad, because they knew they wanted it in junior high. They knew they wanted to hang out with the girls, but they couldn't, because their body didn't match, and they were stuck in a role to please everybody else, living as a male. So that's really sad that they missed that. But anyway, when they come to see me, we figure out what they like to do, and then we help them figure out how they're going to do it. Interesting thing, though, about the sexual orientation is it seems like a lot of my clients, as they're going through that confused time with their orientation, they get kind of, so the LGB groups, they're a safe place for them to go to for information and to be accepted. But I've had clients identify, for example, my female to male clients say, well, I love women. I don't want to be around men. I don't like body hair. I don't like male, the odor, the musky smell of a man. They have an aversion to the parts of themselves that they don't like. So they don't want to be around men because they don't like acting like a man. They want to be around women so they can act like a woman. But they confuse that as being attracted to women. So they identify as a lesbian. They're like, I'm a female in the brain and I'm in love with women. I like being around women. So I must be a lesbian. And then they're like this card-carrying LGBT lesbian. Only decades later do they realize, or working with me, figuring out who they are, like, actually, now that I realize I'm a woman, I'm mentally a woman, I actually kind of wouldn't mind being made love to by a man. In fact, that's been my sexual fantasy all along. Maybe I'm a heterosexual woman. And that is where my clients tend to end up. So they think they're gay with men, then they think they're gay with women. Once they think they're woman or realize they're woman, and then they finally realize they're a heterosexual woman. And that is a very consistent pattern I see in my clients. In the end, if they can integrate their identity to how their brain is hardwired. If you have a hardwired female brain, like I have clients telling me when they were a little kid that they had dreams about Prince Charming coming and proposing marriage and having a wedding and getting pregnant and carrying a baby and giving birth. In fact, when some of my clients who have transitioned, like this is again going back to that common sense thing, like it isn't common sense. Like one of the common things that they'll hear is, well, welcome to the team, but lucky for you, you never had to have a period. And some of my clients actually break down crying. They're like, do you know how many times I went to bed as a kid praying to God, please, when I wake up in the morning, let me be a woman. I would do anything to have a period. I would do anything to get pregnant and have a baby. I want to nurse the baby. They have all the instincts of a woman. Their brain is so hardwired. I mean, they tell me things only a woman could dream of. It's just, I can't think any other way than that's a female brain. Only a female would think that way. And so, going back from childhood all the way up to adulthood, and they're going to die a female brain, right? So if you're an embryo with a female brain, you're born with a female brain, you live your life with a female brain, you die with a female brain, then where's the transition? So this brings me to a revelation I had a year ago. I had a pre-adolescent client come to me. We were getting involved with the school, with the coming out process, and I was introduced to the faculty as a transgender therapist. Ironically, the sign out front of one of my offices, I actually had transgender therapist on it. But for some reason with this young kid, I thought, I am not... First of all, I didn't want the faculty to think that I had some assembly line in my office where people come in and I just transition them. Like everybody, like I'm on this big kick to transition everybody I see into a woman. That's not the case. Because, as I explained with the 81-year-old, not everybody who has gender dysphoria should transition, because it could be just a coping mechanism. It could also be the result of sexual abuse, where the body parts targeted in the sexual abuse, the person might disown those body parts. So if grandpa or uncle's fondling the little girl's breasts, she might not like her breasts, and she might come sort of a masculine persona out of just to survive. And she may find herself down the road wanting to transition. Maybe she gets involved with an LGBT group, or maybe she just never gets counseling, never gets to figure out what's going on there. But with those kind of clients, the more you address the sexual abuse, the less they want to transition. So that's why it's critical. And that's why we are the gatekeepers for surgeries. Surgeons, they rely on us to tease all that out because they don't want to do surgery on somebody who down the road is going to regret it. That's our job to decide or to help them figure out, yes, this person is justified to have this physical work done because the body didn't develop to match the brain. So that's basically what my job is to help tease that out. So with that pre-adolescent client 2 years ago, like I said, I had a sign out front of my office that said transgender therapist. So obviously up to that point, I had been identifying as a transgender therapist. So with this pre-adolescent client that came to me, I realized, okay, first of all, I don't want people to think I transition every client who comes through the door. But more importantly, this little human being in front of me deserves to feel normal and live a normal life as part of society. So why would I encourage this little kid to internalize, to adopt an identity as a transgender person? Like what? Basically, I would be saddling this kid as a freak the rest of his life. And it just became super clear to me all of a sudden, wow, being transgender should not be an identity. As a clinician, I can't support it. So here are my thoughts on this big revelation I had. This particular kiddo was female to male. And it was really cute that the father, as the kid's coming out, and the dad was mom and dad were together, but the dad was super accepting of it and started calling the kid affectionately little dude, which I thought was adorable. And the kid really liked it too. So I thought to myself, why would I not just want this little dude to just go live as a little dude and be a dude the rest of his life? Like, why would I say, here, take this identity as like this in-between freak and just carry that with you the rest of your life so you'll never feel like you fit in? Like, why would I do that? Like, how could I clinically doom this person, set this person on this self-fulfilling prophecy to never feel like a whole person, to have this incongruence, where the brain is wired one way and the body is the other way, and then fix the body, but then continue to carry that congruence or tell everybody about it the rest of his life. I mean, in fact, the kid wanted to go to a new school the next year after transitioning in order not for people to know that he was born with a female body. So I think adopting the identity of a transgender person is like basically taking your dysphoria with you the rest of your life. And as a clinician, why would I not instead want my clients' identities to be integrated into one human being, into one sex? Everything we do is sexually related. How we walk, how we talk, how we dress, the car we drive, the job we have, so many things are connected with our sex. And I just can't believe, I couldn't let this kid go through life with this incongruence that would affect every frickin' aspect of his life. So, and that kind of, I guess I kind of intuitively, even though this was a big revelation 2 years ago for me, I think I even intuitively knew even before that, when I had clients come to me who transitioned but still considered themselves transgender. And I would ask them, when do you get to stop being transgender? When do you just get to start being who you are? So if you're a woman if your brain is a woman? When do you just get to be a woman? Or are you doomed to be transgender the rest of your life? And then my clients would kind of like, oh, well, I never thought of that. Like, I never thought I could just be a woman. Like, I didn't know that was an option. Yeah, it is an option, and you should just be a woman. And so after my revelation 2 years ago, I thought, I'm going to look up this word transgender and find out, where did it come from? Who started this? And what I'm finding out is the word became very popular in the early 90s. It was used in scholarly articles, and it was introduced as an umbrella term to include non-binary and gender fluid and gay and all kinds of things, which confuses the hell out of everybody to this day. In fact, I have one client in particular who says, I wish people would just quit confusing me with being gender fluid. I'm not gender fluid. I'm not non-binary. I'm a heterosexual woman. Just, quit confusing me with all that other crap. I am a heterosexual woman. I'm a woman. I'm attracted to men. I want to get married. I wish I could have a baby. I can't. But I'm a heterosexual woman. Like, why is that so confusing for people? And I thought, wow, that's really profound. And she's right. She's totally right. Being gender fluid and non-binary is not the same as my clients with gender dysphoria who, whose ovaries dropped and became testes and their body was doomed to develop, male traits. So to me, that's a medical issue. And most of my clients, again, we assume that the T and the LGBTQIQ, blah, 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 the million letters after, we assume that the T is the transgender group and that they asked to be a part of the LGB rainbow group, but they didn't. They didn't ask to be part of that group. In fact, most of my clients, just like if I had a tumor, I would go to the doctor in private, I would have it treated, and then I would go on my merry way in private and live my life. I wouldn't be telling everybody I'm proud to have a tumor and make it known, to the whole town or country or world or whatever. Same thing with my clients. They look down between their legs, and to them, the genitalia that developed might as well be a tumor. It doesn't belong. It doesn't, their brain almost doesn't even own it. And they want it fixed medically. It's a medical issue. If it was an endocrine issue like during the fetal development that caused the ovaries to drop in the first place, that's a medical issue, and it should be treated medically, and it should be done in private, and they should be allowed to go live their life in private as the female that they were meant to be, and not have to dwell on this whole political, ideological LGB rainbow stuff that, in fact, that was another revelation I had with that pre-adolescent kiddo, because when he started coming out or realizing that that was what he wanted to do or needed to do, he made a comment about, I can't wait to go back to school. I'm going to get involved with the gay pride events and I'm going to advocate. And then I was like, wait. I was like, why would you get involved with that? Unfortunately, here's my big problem with the LGB groups. They're very entrenched. They're very much entrenched with the Democratic political party. So by getting involved with that group, which would make sense if I had a gender issue and there's a group that's going to accept me and educate me, I would be drawn to that group for safety and security, if no other reason. But now I'm also inadvertently identifying with a political group. And the other half of the country or world that's more conservative is going to have a sort of an aversion to me, not necessarily because of what's going on with me, but because of the party I'm attached to. And then it gets all twisted around in my clients' minds that conservatives are evil. They don't like me because I transitioned or that I'm gay or whatever. And I really believe the reason half the country like maybe when they talk, they shut down or they feel like they're discriminating against them, is not because of who they are, but because of the party that they're attached to and the differences between the parties. So likewise, if my clients are identifying with the Democratic Party because they're part of the LGBT group, when their uncle or dad or whoever who's a conservative starts talking, they shut down too. So both sides are shutting down. They don't even talk because each belongs to the other political group. And it's really sad because that doesn't even have to be brought into this equation. I really encourage all my clients to just tease all that political crap out and just look, like I said, at it from a medical model, and then integrate their identity and go on their merry way and live a normal life. There's no reason to be held captive by a political group just because you found a safety with that LGBT group, which, I mean, I get it. I get why they get kind of sucked into it. But as a clinician, I can't get behind it. Another problem I have with the LGBT stuff is, and I'm just going to put it out there, and I'm sure half of the world's going to hate me for it, but the WPATH group, the World Professional Association of Transgender Health, they're the ones who write the standards of care for people who have gender dysphoria and are transitioning. So they've done a wonderful job of getting together all the endocrinologists and all the surgeons and all the therapists. You know, we go to conferences all over the world and we have webinars and, you know, it's super informative. Like I said, they write the standards of care used by the doctors and the therapists who are treating this group. They've done a great job of accumulating the data, you know, so they've done an amazing service. You can't get that information anywhere else. My only concern is, for example, during one of the last webinars that I participated in, I noticed this almost, it seems like they've become like a cocooned social group. So, for example, we were talking about neurodivergence. So people like maybe who have Asperger's and gender dysphoria. And we were talking about things like, does someone with Asperger's even know what gender is? What is their concept of gender and how do they portray that? You know, like one person in real life that I met who had Asperger's thought she was gender, what did she say? She said, I'm non-binary. And when asked why, she said, well, because I like to do some things that boys like to do. And I was thinking, well, I grew up a tomboy. I do a lot of things that boys like to do. But her sort of simplistic black and white understanding of behavior led her to believe, oh, I'm non-binary because there are parts of me that are male and parts of me that are female. So anyway, so we're talking about that kind of thing in this webinar. And somebody put a comment in the chat about, can we stop using the phrase on the spectrum because it's triggering me? And, well, on the spectrum is a kind of a clinical phrase that's used quite a bit in the mental health field. It just means you're on in fact, the new DSM, you know, Asperger's and autism are on a spectrum. That's the whole idea. And so you're kind of talking about like, what part of the spectrum is this person on? Anyway, so somebody writes in the chat, in the Zoom, in the webinar, can we stop saying on the spectrum because it's triggering me? I was shocked to see so many people in the webinar. There were a couple hundred people from around the world reply in the chat, I'm so sorry, I won't say that ever again. I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to offend you. As a clinician, my first reaction is it really healthy for you to be triggered by that, by a technical medical phrase? Like, maybe as a clinician, it's my job to help you not be so sensitive and triggered by that phrase. So as a clinician, a mental health clinician, my job is to help you to not be triggered and to, you know, be able to talk about stuff and be resilient and not feel like it's so emotionally charged. But when I saw mental health clinicians, psychiatrists and professional clinical counselors like myself responding, oh yes, I'm so sorry, I'll never say it again, I thought, wow, like, and I get it. I think it comes from the LGBT groups
response when someone says, hey, you misgendered me, or this is my preferred name, or this is my preferred gender. And then the reaction typically is, oh, I'm sorry, I will call you by how you want to be called, right? I mean, that's fine. But you can only take that so far. It should not become your, standard operating procedure anytime somebody says, hey, you offended me. And then you're just going to change the way you act around that person, even if it's not in their best interest. So that's when I realized the WPATH group, at least in that, and I've seen it in other webinars too, it's kind of been a growing concern of mine that this LGB group has become like this very cocooned social group. That's all I can say, because I'm not a part of that cocoon. I live in a rural community. I also work with veterans and first responders. So I feel like I'm more maybe objective in this area. I'm not living day in and day out with genderqueer people. I don't speak that language. There's like this certain like unwritten rules with the LGB groups, and I'm just seeing it in the WPATH. And so I'm kind of like, I don't know, I'm kind of feeling like that kind of concerns me a little bit. And I'm kind of torn because I love the information that WPATH has provided me. I love going to conferences and talking with surgeons and endocrinologists from around the world. I love that, and asking them about electrolysis and, why do people have to stop smoking or stop certain hormones before surgery, and how the tissues heal, and dilating vaginal canals, and, all the tissues, it's just amazing. I just love it. And they provide that information to us that nobody else does. So I give them credit for that. But I just hope that they will have some awareness that they're moving away from their clinical or medical, like professionalism. The LGB culture is sort of contaminating that. That's how I feel. So I tell my clients, look, even though you go on the internet, it's all the LGB websites, that's where you're getting all the information. That's the group that accepted you first, made you feel safe. I get it. However, I want you to integrate into society as a normal person. I don't want you to be part of like a group of outcasts who are together in a group because they're all outcasts, because that's kind of what it is. So I want my clients, if you're a male in the brain or a female in the brain, I want you to live your life that matches that. And that's all it's pretty simple, basically. So like I said, there is no transition. If you're developing in the womb as a female, you're born as a female, you live your life with a female brain, and you die with a female brain. Where's the transition? Really, the only thing that needs to happen is some medical procedures to fix some body parts that developed according to the hormones produced by the ovaries that dropped in and became testes. And then the people can move on. And in the old days, like I said, the baby was born, you look between the legs, you assume that's the sex of the baby. And we learned the hard way. Just because someone has a penis or a vulva between their legs, we would make that kid grow up to be that sex. And guess what? A lot of people committed suicide. You can change what's between their legs, but you can't change what's between their ears. So that's why I tell people our sex is between our ears, not between our legs. Once you get that, then it's simple. And unfortunately, I kind of wish like every baby that's born, I wish we could scan the brain and say, oh, this is a female brain. Oh, that's a male brain. And then if we see that the body doesn't match that, we can have a heads up. Oh, this kid might need to transition. Let's watch to see how the kid evolves, And I get it that some people say, well, I don't believe kids can be transgender. I even had a professor tell me that, who was a specialist in child psychology. It's not for us to decide. If I've got a little, so let me just say this. If you have a little boy who just likes to wear dresses, but doesn't want to cut off his penis, doesn't want to have babies, then it's just a little boy who wants to wear a dress, and that's fine. Not every little boy who wants to wear a dress should transition. I'm not saying he's gender dysphoric, Maybe he's just a boy who wants to wear a dress. But if the little boy is fantasizing cutting off his penis, if the little boy is having dreams about having babies, growing up to become a mommy, obviously, and as he develops relationships, you start seeing him socially developing as a girl would, then And I don't tell parents, your kid needs to transition. The kid tells you. The kid will tell you, if I don't get to wear pink and wear a dress and hang out with the other girls at school, I'm going to kill myself. They know it because that's how their brain is wired. They know what they need to do. And so it's just a matter of really listening to the kid. Now, the next question is, well, what does it mean to transition? How far do they go? Well, some clients want to have top surgery. Some clients, they want to have big boobs. They want to take more hormones. They want to have implants. Some clients say, no, I'm fine. I'm going to become a kind of woman with a more slender physique. The kind of clothes I want to wear will look fine with a more conservative chest. I'm just going to let the hormones develop what I'm going to get, and I'll be fine with that. Other clients say, nope, I'm going to wear the kind of clothes that I need to fill them out, or I have a bigger body frame. I'm going to look better with bigger boobs. It just makes more sense for me to have big boobs. Or same thing with the bottom. Not every client wants bottom surgery. Some clients need it. They literally, their brain has not owned or wired to what is between their legs, and it is almost painful for them to have a penis. They just don't want to touch it. They don't want to look at it. It's super dysphoric. Every time they look at it, they feel disgusted. So for their own well-being, I would definitely facilitate bottom surgery for them to have a vaginoplasty. But I have some clients who say, you know what? I just want to look like a female in my clothes. So I want to have a chest. I want to look good. But I'm fine downstairs. I don't mind my penis. And I'm fine with the kind of relationships I'm going to have, with that being a part of that. And I'm good to go. So that's a personal decision for each person. I think a goal for mental health would be in the future that however a child is born, that they would be able to accept their body and live with that. That would be the goal. In the old days, people would be different, and the church or the therapists would use reparative therapy and try to make them straight. A lot of them committed suicide in the end. That didn't work. And then like a pendulum, it swung the other way, where therapists were almost pushing people to get surgeries, transition. But that wasn't good either, because not everybody needed that. So now the pendulum kind of has come to the middle, where we look at each client separately and figure out what's best for you. What is going to keep you from killing yourself? What's going to help you have relationships? What's going to help you fulfill that sexual fantasy and find intimacy with someone you love? What's going to help you get that job you've always wanted and live the life you've always dreamed of with the body that fits how your brain feels? And so that's really, where I'm at with my clients. And it's a new frontier in a way that, like I said, that's why I want to do these videos, is I want to share all the things that I've learned and continue to learn. Not too many people, even for example, a lot of my clients say, well, I learned about what transgender means by watching videos on the internet of transgender people. So you have somebody who has gender dysphoria or who has transitioned, they'll share their story online. And that's all my clients know. The problem is, these people aren't experts on gender dysphoria, and they're not experts on transitioning. Just because someone has cancer, they're not an expert on cancer. And some of these people might actually have some psychological issues they need to work on. So they might have sort of a skewed perspective on their, sexual identity or the transitioning process or the way society treats them. And that might not be in the best interest of people like my clients to be learning about. So I think it's really important that people like me who have the awesome, amazing privilege of hearing stories and talking and working with people day in and day out with the most intimate aspects of their life concerning their sexual identity. These are the things that I feel very fortunate to be able to hear, and then my clients are, trust me to share that with me. And I feel that I owe it to the rest of the world to share that. I mean, obviously not the details and their identity and like HIPAA kind of thing, but I mean to share the lessons learned so that you can have a better, deeper understanding of what they're going through. I think if I had to just like sum up, the biggest lessons that I want to talk about in this introduction, it would be that being transgender should not be an identity. It's not in the best interest of people mentally, emotionally, to take on that identity. I think however you're born, however your brain is wired, that's who you are. And it just turns out, it just is the fact that it's easier to manipulate the physical body to match the brain than it is to manipulate the brain to match the body. And that's why whatever brain you're born with, you're stuck with, and we can, through surgery or hormones, adjust your body to fit that. So I think, I don't know if there's anything else I wanted to say about that, but most of my clients, once they start even making the tiniest bit of progress toward accepting who they are and nurturing that identity, just like even a tiny bit of progress, like maybe they go get their nails done, or maybe they go get their first feminine haircut, or maybe they for the first time in their life go to the women's section of the department store to buy an outfit. Like, that's huge. If they even take like a tiny little step forward, they feel this almost exponential happiness and energy. Like I always describe it as they just take the ball and run with it. And then my job becomes very easy. Like, basically I help them figure out, like, who the hell are you? Okay, this is who you are. Let me now just help you with the logistics of it. Like, if you need to change part of your body, I'll hook you up with the endocrinologist and the doctor. If you need to buy some clothes, let's go shopping. If you need to learn how to put on makeup, let's do that. And then sometimes I do some groups, and that's really fun because the synergistic effect of them, that's another thing. Like, people who experience gender dysphoria, so many of them have never met another person in real life who's experienced gender dysphoria. It reminds me of that Police song, The Message in the Bottle, where he talks about being on that island by himself, and he sends out a message in the bottle, and he's all alone. And then the next morning he wakes up to millions of bottles washing up on the shore because there's all those lonely people out there. So that's what I think of, like, with my clients with gender dysphoria, is like, I have all these people in isolation, all alone, all experiencing the same thing. So when I get them together as a group, or in small, like, dyads, triads, whatever, sometimes it's magical that they are in the same room looking at another living, breathing human being who has gone through what they've gone through. It's just amazing to see. They don't have to explain it to each other, but they have all these questions for each other, and they can just talk and talk and talk forever. What was it like for you to go through junior high or high school? And what was it like for you, when you got your first haircut, or when you discovered that you might be a female, or whatever, it's a bazillion questions they ask each other. But like I said, it's a synergistic, exponential, amazing phenomenon. Like, the efficacy back and forth, like, well, she's talking femininely and she even sits like a girl and she's really kind of cute and girly. I think I could do that. I think I could learn to do that. And then they model from each other because they've been socialized as males. So they've been taught to sit like males and talk like males and act like males. So that's another thing. As I was talking about the orientation process, the evolution of that, the sexual orientation. Another thing that I found in my clients is this resistance of like for voice, for example. One thing that's come up for a few of my clients is this idea that so you're transitioning to female, but you have this male voice. So how do you feminize your voice? And if you do attempt to feminize your voice, do you just come off sounding like a gay male? And justifiably, my clients know they're not gay. They know they're not a dude that wants to sleep with a dude. They're a woman who wants to sleep with a dude. So all their life, they've resisted this idea that they're gay. I'm not gay. I'm not gay. I'm not gay. So now when they're trying to feminize their voice, unfortunately, the first stage of that kind of does come off sounding like a very effeminate gay male. But I just ask my clients to embrace that. It is what it is. You're just going to have to go through that. And that sometimes when it's just the client and me, that's hard to do. But when they're in a group together and they see each other doing it and doing it well, they just, it's kind of funny. Like my clients will say, well, how do I feminize my voice? And I just keep telling them, you know what? You just allow yourself to be the woman you are, and it will just flow out of you. And that's what happens when they're in their groups together. They see how beautiful it is when one of the other clients is expressing herself in a feminine way, and then they realize, wow, that's beautiful, and I think I can do that. And then they maybe even subconsciously, I don't even think they realize it, but they also start sounding more femininely. And that's, if you think about it, as girls or as boys growing up, we're modeling each other anyway. So it's not anything new really. But I see my clients who are transitioning later in life as sort of like going back in time and reliving through their childhood or reliving through puberty to kind of reset it, to reintegrate their identity to match how they're hardwired. One point I do want to make about our hardwiring of everybody else's brain is, and this was something I would give Paul credit for again, is we were talking about, so when someone's transitioning, obviously, especially like a middle-aged man who's becoming a woman physically, it's not going to be overnight. You're going to see, oh, that looks like a guy in a dress. That looks like a man who's feminizing. And a lot of people are okay with that. I live in a rural community and everyone assumes it's a bunch of rednecks. But to be honest, everyone here has been fantastic with my clients. In fact, so much so, a couple of my clients out themselves even at the gas station because everyone keeps telling them what an inspiration they are. So there goes that idea. But I was asking Paul, like, what do you think it is about, like, some people, when they look at a person who's transitioning, they are repulsed by it, or they have to keep looking, like they can't quit staring. And I don't, of course, for the client, they're already self-conscious and they don't like people staring at them, and that's hard for them. But what Paul said, and I agree with him, is that we are hardwired as procreative human beings to look at another person and know within an instant, is that a male or female? Because we need to know, is that someone I could mate with? Is that someone I should, how should I be behaving with this other human being? So we need to know, is that male or female? And if you look at someone out in public and your brain can't make that automatic assessment, then all of a sudden you sort of consciously like, wait a minute, let me take another look and figure out, is that a man or a woman? Some people, Paul was arguing or explaining, have a harder time sitting with that, with those opposing sex, gender cues, I guess. So for them, maybe it's just like, we're hardwired to identify someone male or female. a lot of us are okay if we look at someone, we're like, oh, that looks like someone's transitioning. We might go up and like I was saying with some of my clients, strangers come up to them and ask them, oh, you're transitioning? Wow, that's great. I could never do that. You're such an inspiration. A lot of us can deal with that, but there are some people who just, because we're just wired so deep to have to know if someone's male or female, have a hard time sitting with that. And that's more of just a sort of, a subconscious sense, more so than like a discriminatory or disliking sense. And so I like the way Paul explained that. And I think because it takes the judgment out of the situation, and it helps to look at people who maybe have a hard time accepting people transitioning to this sort of visceral reaction. Another thing I've learned too about families, about loved ones, when someone comes out to them, that person's been thinking about that for years. Whereas the family, like for them, this might be new information. And so then because I'll tell my clients, hey, just so you know, I might spend more time with your loved ones than with you because they have to put up with this. Like you're turning everybody's life upside down. You knew about this all along, but this is new for them and they need time to cope and adapt and figure it out. And so don't act entitled and all of that. Just know that everybody's human being and everybody loves you and we're going to get through this together, and you're not making their life any easier, but you still have a right to do what you're doing, but just let's have an awareness of how you're affecting the people around you. And a lot of times loved ones, especially parents, will resist. Like let's say their 25-year-old kid comes out to them. The parents will often be resistant. And it's not because they're discriminating. It's not because they don't trust their kid. Well, they might wonder, have you been reading stuff online? Like, are you, I've heard of people actually sort of like subconsciously fabricating being fluid or non-binary just to be accepted into the LGBT group, to be a part of that group. So I've heard of that. But I think loved ones resist the transition out of a fear that they don't want their kid to have a difficult life. And so they want to protect the kid. And, by transitioning, obviously, by default, that's going to be difficult. So they don't want their kid to be going through that. So they're going to resist. But then what ends up happening is once the person starts transitioning and coming out, and they go from being a dissociated, depressed, terrible, suicidal person to all of a sudden being a social butterfly, doing karaoke and doing all kinds of things that they would have never otherwise done, and they're super happy and excited about life, starting relationships, and then the loved ones realize, wow, I've never seen this person so happy. How can I not get behind this? How can I not support this person? So usually the loved ones do resist in the beginning, but then they come around once they, one, see how easy it is. It's not the big nightmare they thought it was going to be. And two, they see how happy their loved one is. So they have to support that. So that's that part. With the family, I don't know. I think that's enough for now. I could probably talk about this for frickin' 5 days. I've heard and learned so many things from my clients. It's just amazing. But anyway, I just thought I'd share all these things with you guys to hopefully make it easier for you to understand what's going on with these people's lives and not just assume what you hear in the LGBT groups or on the news or politics or that kind of thing. I just encourage you to look at it through the medical model, tease out all the political stuff. And if you know someone who's experiencing gender dysphoria, please reach out, get them some help, some counseling, someone like me who can help them figure out who they are and how to live a life that allows them to have healthy relationships, to connect with people, because otherwise they don't have an identity. They're just a shell of a person that doesn't connect with anyone. And that's really sad. So Anyway, I think that, like I said, that's enough. And again, if you're still with me, thank you for watching to the end. And we'll definitely be doing more of these podcasts, so keep checking back with me. And probably wouldn't hurt for you to subscribe to my YouTube channel that is called Chera Therapy. So be sure to do that. All right, you guys, thank you so much. And see you next time. Bye-bye.